Hey everyone, this is Evan from Branch Metrics. I wanted to introduce you to our panelists who we have for our webinar today. We have Mata from Branch Metrics and Aaron from MoEngage. They'll be discussing the 5 surefire methods to boost user engagement. Mata, go ahead and take it away.
Hi guys. First of all, really excited to be on this webinar with you. I'm Mada. I'm one of the co-founders of Branch Metrics. I do developer marketing and community here. The way we started Branch, we actually built an app first, grew it, ended up selling it, and basically built Branch to solve all the problems we had as mobile app developers. So I'm pretty passionate about growing things, growing apps. I read a lot of books on virality, so I always try to wonder how does virality work and how can we make virality better. And I also built a mobile growth community for Branch. We have about 15,000 people, and we are all over the world, and we try to have people all over the world kind of share knowledge and educate themselves on how they can grow apps better. Aaron, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, sure do. Hey, everybody. I'm Aaron with MoEngage, and I head up marketing at the company. What MoEngage does is we help mobile app companies engage their users. And you're like, okay, Aaron, that's great, right? Thank you. But let me give you a little bit more detail, right? Our solution lets mobile apps monitor user behavior in real time and then automatically trigger personalized messages to be sent to those users by email, app push, web push, and in-app messaging. So obviously a lot of apps use us to do things like send promotions at the right time for certain customers, for e-commerce. If they've left an item in their cart and they forget to check out, we remind them that that item is there and try to drive purchase. We help with onboarding. There's really thousands of different things you can do when when you can monitor user behavior and then trigger communications based on that. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about MoEngage. Okay, well, let's kick this off. So the reason that we're all here, right, is we're looking for best practices to keep users more engaged on our apps. And here are the 5 methods we're going to cover today. First, we're going to explain the value of opting in before you ask. That's one thing we're going to touch upon. We're going to talk about onboarding users, how do you get them engaged and ramped up quickly. Talk about personalization, talk about measurement, an all-important topic when it comes to mobile growth. And then we're going to talk about this concept of really having a dialogue. What's possible when you can have this kind of two-way communication with your users, given the fact that you can't sit them down in a chair right across from you and have that one-on-one communication. So those are the 5 methods we're going to talk about today. Okay.
And I also want to encourage people before we jump in here that they're welcome to ask questions. So if you use the questions tab in your GoToWebinar panel, we'll be able to answer the questions at the end of the webinar. So please ask your questions. I see there's already a couple trickling through, and then we'll be able to answer those at the end.
Super. Yeah. Thanks, Evan. So let's start with the first topic. Let's kick things off with this explaining the value of opting in before you ask. Said another way, I like to think of it as reducing friction, right? You got to tell people what they're going to get after doing something you want them to do, right? Show them a little bit of value before asking them to come further. And for any of those that remember E.T. from the 80s and Elliot, I think of it exactly of E.T. and his Reese's Pieces, right? E.T. was eating Reese's Pieces from the garage all the way into Elliot's room. If Elliot would have said, hey, come to my room, crazy alien, right now, obviously E.T. would have ran away and there would have been no movie. But the whole point here, right, is baby steps, getting users to take little incremental steps that bring them into your brand and engage them with your app and brand. So, we've got some examples showing value before getting users to take the next step, and Mata's going to tell you about those.
Awesome. So one of the first ones I'm going to go through is actually something that we call a branch deep views. So when we were building Branch, we noticed that when people were getting links to invites into the app, people would not click, or they would click on the link, get to the App Store, not know what was going to be in the app, and drop off. So by allowing your users to preview app content from mobile web, they can make a more informed decision on whether they're going to install the app or not. So basically, a deep view is a web preview of the content within the app. So when someone clicks on a link, instead of being taken straight to the App Store, they're taken to a preview of what their content is going to be. And in this case, it's an example of a crispy potatoes recipe in Yamli. So we looked at all the numbers across people who are using deep views or not, and we saw that users who click the Get the App are 6 times more likely to install the app compared to sending users directly to the App Store. So they are basically engaging with the content before they actually have to go through the step of downloading the app. Aaron?
Yeah.
Back to you.
Awesome. Great. Well, once the app is installed, right, one of the things that we help our users do is really engage them with different types of messages. Now, obviously, this isn't the Wild West anymore where anything goes, right? You can't send every message you want to everybody. You need to get permission, and you need to get that permission to communicate. And, asking permission is just that, an ask. And with that ask, you as the app publisher have the burden of convincing the user that and sometimes that they should trust you to not spam them, right? I mean, we all know this. So Forrester at the end of 2015 had a report out for mobile retailer apps and said that only 32% of consumers allow notifications. Now, why is that? Well, it's the same reason that we all kind of hesitate a little bit when we think about opting into a message, right? Consumers are concerned with the frequency that retailers will send messages, and they're concerned they're not going to see any value in those messages. And it's really no surprise when, I'm sure all of us have had this happen, but I'm a guy, I get a push notification from Barney's New York at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday telling me there's a special on little black dresses, right? Not timely, not relevant. I don't like to get woken up by Barney's. You see the idea. And of course the goal is, what can you do about that? Well, one of the things you can do is really explain the value. And we've helped our customers actually get into the 50% range versus this 32%, which is kind of industry norm. And again, these are just general figures. I mean, every app is different. Every audience is different. This may vary widely for you and your app. But just in general, we've seen really huge lifts in opt-in rates when people do stuff like the Climb does in their app. I've looked at hundreds of apps, and this is one of the best kind of opt-in screens that I've seen. They explain the value of why you should opt into push notifications, right? You're going to get exclusive discounts. You're going to get time-sensitive promotions, that kind of thing. And it just tells people what they're going to get versus just popping up that wacky system message that you see there on the left, which is what the Weight Watchers app does, right? Here's this thing, yes, allow or don't allow, and there's no idea what you're going to do with that, what the publisher is actually going to do with that information. So that's something that we're big fans of doing, is really explaining the value before you ask. Here's another great example. Bloomingdale's, I think, does a great example of this, right? Flashing up this full screen explanation before they get people to opt into geolocation. So there's another example of engaging users in that way. Also, too, there's another power with with getting these messages to people, right? Asking them again, right? Just because somebody doesn't opt in, one of the things that we see is kind of some money on the table, if you will, or just really some low-hanging fruit, is detect if people haven't opted in and hit them up again, and just make sure that you explain once again what the value is. We've actually seen our customers get like a 10% lift of people opting in when they're asked again. So somebody who had previously gone on the app, said, I'm not going to allow this particular notification. Our customers went back to them again and saw a 10% increase in the amount of people that opted in. So obviously very, very important, right? If you get people to opt into receiving communication, you've got the ability to engage them.
Cool, thanks, Aaron. So let's talk about the second part. So that's onboarding users. So what's onboarding? Onboarding is simply walking users to some simple steps to get them started doing them what you want to do. So giving them a preview of their app and getting them to really understand what your app is about before they start engaging. So we have two different approaches. We have two different approaches to onboarding. One is taking them to some steps and teaching them how your app works, and the second is to take them directly to your deep link content. So let's talk about what onboarding is not. Onboarding is not getting users to download your app. So you work a lot through your blood, sweat, and tears to asking all your friends to come and install your app, to working with bloggers and getting them to promote your app, to doing really well and building a beautiful app and getting featured in the App Store, to paying a lot of money for on Facebook or Twitter to get installs. Once you install, what you do after, once you get them to download, what you do after to actually get them to activate, that's actually onboarding. Getting them from awareness to install, that's not onboarding. So activation is where you've gotten a user engage with your app. So just because they downloaded and opened their app, if they close it and never come back, it means you haven't properly onboarded them. So you've built enough momentum because they've downloaded your app that you can get them to do something with your app. Maybe it's a purchase, creating an account, messaging someone, some milestone that tells you that they're more likely to stay engaged. So we've had customers doing this successfully using push and in-app messaging, and I have some great examples on how to do this with deep linking as well. So let's talk about an example with game time. So always we hear people ask, is onboarding important for user engagement? Game time was curious to find out, and they used both branch and optimize together to determine the most optimal onboarding flow. So here's an example of the test that Game Time ran while using optimize and branch links. So they sent 5% of their traffic to an onboarding flow versus 5% of that traffic was actually deep linked directly to the seats that were promoted in an ad. So this was basically an ad. People clicked on an ad for a specific set of tickets, and you either took them straight to the ad or you took them to like, oh, this is how Game Time works. So think about what results do you expect. I think we've seen a lot of app developers who really think that the flow and teaching them how to use the app is actually very important and are reluctant to actually taking them straight to the content. But let's see what the results they got. So actually, the people who are taken straight to the tickets from the ad, and you can see the example of the ad on Facebook here, saw a 15% increase in purchases. So the onboarding flow, which people spent a lot of time creating, actually decreased the conversion to purchase in this place. Users are fickle, want their content immediately, and they think they can figure out the app itself. So if you take them to too many steps to teach them how to use the app, they will probably get bored and drop off. So basically what this tells me, take people straight to the content they were looking for, and they're going to be way more likely to purchase. And we actually ran a similar test with Hotel Tonight, and they saw very, very similar results in increasing purchase percentages. So by keeping the context of where a user is coming from, onboarding practically disappears. They see something on the website or something like that, and they go to the App Store, they install the app, or they open the app directly, and you need to take them straight to that content. That's actually the best way you can onboard a user. So don't change context. That will decrease conversions and activations. And this is another example of Jet, one of our partners, who when you go on a product, and in this case, I think it's a dishwasher, they put a banner that says, "Hey, get Jet." But when they go into the app from that banner and they download the app and open it, the first thing they're going to see is the same dishwasher detergent they were on before, because they want to keep the context going, and they've like tested this and see that this has actually the best results.
Great, thanks, Mata. Yeah. Personalization, right? So I'm sure we've all heard that personalization is powerful, and quite frankly, that's because it's true, right? Personalization, though, is a word that means many things to many people. So we're going to cover a handful of examples, but just know that personalization comes in many forms, right? The key thing to always consider is what makes sense to all of us, right? If a message or action or some kind of experience is more relevant to us as individuals, we're going to be more responsive to that. And that to us is what personalization means. So even something as simple is knowing a user's first name and using it in communication with them gives you bumps in response rates. I know it seems really silly, but we've seen customers literally include the user's first name in a push notification, and they see like an 8% jump in response rates just by doing that. I mean, it doesn't seem like it would have that big of an impact, but it does. So yeah, let's take a look at some examples Branch has for actually personalizing the user experience.
Sure, thanks, Aaron. So this is personalization is really important, and when we think about personalization, think about all the information you have to make the experience the best you possibly can for the user that's going to open the app for the first time. So a lot of times, because they're opening the app for the first time and maybe they're coming from a friend who invited them, you might not know anything about the user, but you know things about their friend. So in this example, this is an app called Gogobot. They're a travel app. So they tested two different things. So one is a user comes to Gogobot and they see just the regular sign up screen. So it says continue with Facebook, sign up, or just sign up with email. Or if a user came from a friend who invited them. So in this case, actually, Evan was inviting me. I was going to San Diego for a meetup, and he was sharing with me a specific list of things I should do in San Diego. So when Evan shared that travel list with me, Gogobot put the parameters in that link. So the fact that Evan was sharing the link, the fact that he was sharing a specific perfect day in San Diego, and then Evan texted me the link. When I click on the link and then installed the app and opened it for the first time, they used the information from his link to actually personalize the install experience for me. And they say, hey, Evan shared the list. Here's Evan's face because he's already a Gogobot user, and they have that. And they said the name of the list is the perfect San Diego day, and here's the list. So as soon as I continue, I'm actually taken to that list and I can see the things that they shared with me. And that's the first screen I see when I open Gogobot. And then they tested how many people are signing up from the initial screen. That's very basic, no personalization, versus second one. And they actually were really surprised by the results. And Zaid, the PM who implemented that, actually talks about this whenever he goes to conferences, because it actually increased their conversion to sign up by 78%. So almost double their conversion to sign up. So think about it. If whatever your user is worth, you've now doubled, we cut your cost down to get the user in half, because you're way more likely to get the signups and get them engaged. And another example is content sharing. So users want to share content. They know what their friends would like better than you do. So make sure that you allow people to actually share content. And then when people click on that content, they're taken directly to the content that was shared. So users who are deep linked to the app content were 7 times as likely to share themselves, and so 2 times increase in retention. So that's awesome. Basically, sharing is the way most viral apps have spread. Think of something like Instagram. It all grew to sharing. So make sure that you add sharing of content in your app.
Awesome. Thanks, Mata. I've got some other examples here about personalization, and for us, we're going to talk about push notifications and what a couple companies have done to really personalize the experience and deliver value to the users. So ClearTrip is one of our customers. They're a large international travel booking app and site backed by SAP and the makers of TripIt. It's very similar to Kayak. And as a travel app and site, ClearTrip customers are searching for booking flights, hotels, cars, etc. So here's some results they experienced. By using our tool to monitor the purchase funnel, they were able to detect when users dropped off the conversion path and deliver a personalized message to them with very, very extreme relevance. So this is the kind of results they saw. As you can see there in the example, they used the first name of the individual, and they know that Parker was looking at flights between New York and Chicago. So when they actually delivered that push notification and did so in an automated way at scale, they had 45 out of 100 people click, so 45%, and then 8 out of 100 actually went ahead and booked. And obviously for travel apps where tickets are kind of this perishable item, this is huge and really great results for them for their business. So, and again, tipping a hat, I guess, to to the folks at Branch. The whole idea about deep linking, swiping this notification actually took Parker right to the New York Chicago screen where the search was completed, and it was very easy for him just to click a few more buttons to complete the purchase. So again, there is this relevance too into taking people right to the content that you're talking to them about in this push notification. Okay, so Clearchip did something else with the same concept, right? Somebody like Parker booked a flight to Chicago. I think a day or two later, they found out, hey, he hasn't booked a hotel yet. Let's actually send him a message to book a hotel. They actually had 20 out of 100 people book a room using this type of push message. Very relevant, very personal, and very, very high response rates. Just simply talking about something that would be valuable to the user. So that's Cleartrip. So we've got another customer called Chappell. There they are. And they're a large international marketplace for sellers and buyers of clothing, shoes, handcrafted goods, etc. They've done some great things with personalizing push notifications, and let's show them to you now. And if you want to think about Chappell, they're really kind of like an Etsy. That would probably be the best way to describe them for something that we know here in the U.S. a lot more. So again, in this particular example, they're looking at people that are buying stuff on the Chappell app. Messages were delivered, triggered based on user actions, and again, these were push messages. But again, you could deliver these in really a variety of different channels: email, even web push if you wanted to. But there's a variety of ways to deliver this type of message. I think the point is making sure that it's very personal and relevant. So notice the personal nature of these, right? The first name of the individuals used, XYZ is essentially the product, and they actually fill in the name of the product. And they haven't purchased it. So this is kind of classic cart abandonment. And when Chappell delivered this push notification to customers, they had 32% of them engage with that notification. Now they wouldn't let us share what the conversion rates were because that's pretty strategic for them. But just getting 32% of people to engage was really, really powerful for them. All right, let's look at another phase of the funnel, if you will. So here's another thing they were trying to do is get items that people had put in their wish list moved out of wish list. So they essentially triggered a notification to be sent that if somebody favorited a listing and hasn't executed a buy within a certain period of time, apply the similar logic, right? And they've got a very similar level of engagement based on that. Okay. Sorry, here my mouse is. There we go. The other thing too is really providing a valuable service, right? One of the things that you can do here is point out how something is, like an update. It can really be worded in a way, I guess, to provide value to the shopper, right? The goal here isn't to really push a purchase, but rather inviting an increased level of communication and engagement. It's like there's a funnel for your product to sell, and there's a funnel for users to become deeper engaged and plugged into different forms of communication. So what Chappell did here is they just say, hey, we noticed that you're interested in this. Would you like us to send you updates in the future? Again, inviting them to receive more communication, but driving even more relevance so that people were more likely to opt in and stay engaged in that way. Okay, final example from Chappell. They simply just asked for more engagement. And I think this is another great example. They didn't ask for a purchase or ask somebody to make a purchase or buy, but they asked them for a chance to communicate more. And obviously more communication means more engagement. And more engagement, obviously down the road, means more purchases. So just knowing that somebody was interested in a particular buyer in a particular set of listings, allowed them to say, hey, let's stay in touch. Let's keep you informed of what this particular individual or store is doing. So they had a lot of success and they get a very high engagement level, 35%, just by using personalized, relevant push notifications.
Cool. So now that you know how to get users engaged, how about measurement? I think measuring the right type of engagement is really important. And sometimes you might think that your users are engaged because they're opening your app, but in fact, they might not be because they might be engaging with the wrong content or the wrong things in your app. So let's talk a little bit about measurement. So don't just stop at clicks or even installs. you need to make sure that you're measuring in-app engagement, so such as signups, purchases, shares, and so forth. So let me tell you about an example with one of our partners, Wattpad. They're a really large book reading app based in Canada with users all over the world. So they had an example. They were testing two different things on their mobile web. So if someone got to a specific book, they tried showing them a very small app open banner versus like a huge interstitial that said, hey, open Wattpad, this is what Wattpad does, go and get the app. So initially, they actually looked at just the clicks, and they saw that there were more people clicking the large banner, which of course makes sense because it was taking the whole page. But they say, hey, look at all these people clicking the banner, the huge app interstitial, that's working much better than the small banner that actually still shows the content. But then they actually use our links to track more than just clicks and to track how many people actually from clicking end up installing the app. So way more clicks on the huge banner, but those people were clicking and then felt tricked somehow and didn't actually end up installing the app. And the small banner, although it had way less clicks, all those clicks were actually turning into installs. So that's something that they wouldn't have seen initially. And based on the test, they actually removed the huge app interstitial and stayed with a very small app open banner. Another example of how you can measure interesting things in your app is actually looking at what is the content that's getting the most engagement. So we have something called content analytics that actually goes and looks at all the different links that were created to one piece of content, and then shows you how that specific content is performing. So I think in this example here, again, we're using, I think, Yamli, and we're looking at different recipes. And we're looking like how many views specific pieces of content have, but also how many links were created to that, so how many people were sharing that, how many clicks those links had, how many clicks per links, and conversion to install. So if you look at all your content and you can understand what is the content that's most engaging in your app, when you're, let's say, for example, doing paid ads to your app, instead of showing paid ads to your app, you can show paid ads to your most engaging content that you know people are more likely to click and install your app from that. So it's just important to understand how your content in your app is performing, where are people dropping off, are they signing up, are they sharing, and things like that. So make sure that you actually track and measure engagement in your app.
Mata, I'll echo your comments about just really looking at some of the detail. I speak to so many marketers who are busy and rushed, and it happens so much more than you think it would. But really, they only seem to have time to measure stats like monthly active users, daily active users, maybe click-through rates. That kind of thing. I guess my advice, and again, I tell myself this too to do this. I think we all need to do this in our work. But really, clear your calendars, push back on your boss's demands. Take the time to go deeper to completed orders or users who converted or whatever results matter to your business, right? Really pay attention to results over activity. So that would just be one thing that I would add there. Super. All right, let's talk about having a dialogue, our fifth concept here. Wouldn't it be great to sit down with a customer, one-on-one, cup of coffee, and have a dialogue about his or her experience? Really, that's what we're advocating. Why you can't sit down and have a 30-minute conversation with a user? You can't do that, right? But you can create interaction that's going to help you build a better app. And I want to show you some examples of some folks that I think are doing a great job of that. So here's Housify, right? This is a great example of Housify and how they use in-app messaging, basically popping up these surveys to users at appropriate times while they're using the app. And this really helps Housify improve the individual experience. They had great success, gathering input from users. 75% of users actually participated in this survey. So I'm sorry that the screen's a little blurry, but what you can see on the left is it really, they've given kind of 3 examples, right? I'm using Housify for option 1, option 2, option 3, and that allowed the Housify team really to dial in, what they're going to be serving up to this individual and why people are using the app. And then on the right, they went a little bit deeper and talked about what types of home design or what home design describes you best. So really, this was a very, very powerful way for them to get feedback and to have that one-on-one communication with certain segments of the users, right? They didn't do this with everybody. They just picked certain segments of users and experimented, and they had some really great results as a result. All right, let's talk about surveying users based on behavior. This is a great example. So I mentioned a company, ClearTrip, before that we work with, who's got a travel app. They've actually deployed this HTML email survey targeted users who have uninstalled their app. So they've actually automatically detected when somebody uninstalls, and then they trigger this survey to try to understand why they uninstall. Now, none of us want people to uninstall our app. It's obviously very, very bad. We don't want that to happen. But if it does happen, we should obviously get as much value as we can out of it. And that's what ClearTrip did. So again, a day, or I think it was a day or a 2 after somebody uninstalled their app, they automatically triggered this email. And again, that assumes you actually have the email address of the user. But ClearTrip actually found out from this survey that 33% of users left because the prices were too expensive. And 25 said, oh, I left because I switched to the competition. And obviously, based on this information, they've been able to make product changements and enhancements based on that feedback. So that's been really awesome. Now here's another really cool example of taking things even a step further. Help Chat is a personal assistant app. Now they did something very similar to ClearTrip, and that I think a day or 2 after somebody uninstalled, they delivered a survey to them, and they asked them a series of questions. But here's what Help Chat did that really I think was really up the ante. Right? They went further and created 2 weeks later it was. 2 weeks after they actually asked for that initial survey, they triggered another email explaining app changes and fixes they've made, along with some coupons and discounts. So they basically said, first, day 1, you've uninstalled our app, please tell us what to improve. 2 weeks later, hey, we've improved our app based on your feedback, right? And they actually did make the improvements. That's obviously a key thing to point out here. But they saw an average of 24% open rates, which are very, very high for email campaigns, with 16% of those people who click through actually reinstalling the app. So just using that idea of this dialogue and having this conversation with the customer actually resulted in them reclaiming users or retargeting users that they'd already spent money to acquire and getting them back for essentially no cost. So it was a huge win for them. Okay. Here's another way of using dialogue, a 2-way dialogue with users, and it's using in-app messages with surveys. So I call these rating examples, right? On the left, you ask your most loyal users to rate your app to encourage your best users to rate you positively. And on the right, you ask another segment of users to rate you before sending them to the App Store. The whole concept here with the in-app message on the right is you put a little bit of intelligence into it. And if you see somebody rate you 4 stars, then you go ahead and send them on to the App Store to complete their rating. If it's below 4, as an example, maybe send them to a survey to gather some feedback from them. So this is a really great way to use the power of messaging within the app to have this dialogue with users and really understand what's on their mind, right? And that can really help you as you measure what they're saying, look at their previous behavior, and really start to inform yourself about what users of this type are doing that maybe makes them extremely satisfied, or what haven't they been doing that makes them dissatisfied. So there's that example. Another example for you is from a company called Snapdeal. So Snapdeal is a large e-commerce marketplace in India. Millions and millions of users every month transacting with them. They identified their most engaged customers and targeted them for referring others versus just asking everyone on the app. So I thought that was really, really intelligent, right? They weren't just blasting out saying, hey, refer a friend. They were picking their most loyal and engaged customers. 70% of their transactions are done via mobile, so obviously that's really, really huge. But what they were able to do with referring friends and getting referrals, they were able to see a 72% increase in people actually making referrals from what they were doing before, and a 75% increase in referral-based signups. So again, this is all because they were very, very targeted, and they had the courage to kind of have this dialogue and ask users about making a referral. They did so in a relevant way. So again, their whole key to success was timing and correct segmentation of their audience, and that's really dialogue that adds to the bottom line.
Thanks, Aaron. So one thing I would add to actually the things you just said, I couldn't agree more. Asking for referrals and asking for reviews is really important. And if you're small, it is actually worth it to try to actually have an actual dialogue. Of course, it's not possible when you're like have hundreds of thousands of users, but in the very early days, it is important if you have the time to go and find your users and then ask them directly. So when we built our app Kindred, in the early days, one thing we did is we would find the people who gave us bad reviews, and we would try to find who they were and find their email and send them an email and ask them, hey, we saw that you gave us a 1-star review. We're so sorry. What did we do wrong? How can we do better? And a lot of times it was actually mistakes that we did. Let's say they didn't get a photo book. We were a photo book printing app. Or something, they just found a bug and they couldn't print a book. So they would let us know, we would apologize, we would send them a free book, we would say, hey, we really want to do better. And a lot, 80 to 90% of those people that we talked to and reach out to actually went and changed their rating from a 1-star to 5-star. So I'm sure most of you know, but
that's great.
The number of reviews that you have and the number of 5-star reviews is the way Apple decides whether they're going to feature you or not. So we got featured in the first week of launching, and I think one of the main reasons we did that was because of our reviews. So first we would like go and ask the people we knew, hey, please review us. And then as soon as we get a bad review, we'd reach out to those people and try to figure out what we can do better. So sorry, just one little story to add.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
And the other thing is, and I think obviously as you grow bigger, but even when you're small, creating a community is something that's important. And we kind of took that to heart. So when we had our app, we would try to create moms are our bigger customers. So we tried to create a community of moms around our app who are using our app. And when we started Branch, because we had been developers ourselves, we actually became very passionate about trying to build a community where people can come and share insights and things that they've learned about Branch, but also just about mobile growth in general. So we started with a meetup in SF. That's now, I think, one of the largest mobile marketing meetups in the world. And then we started taking the meetup and starting it in other places. So we have I think 5 or 6 in India, about 6 in Europe, 2 or 3 in Latin America. We have them all over US, and people come and they talk and they share their insights. And going to those meetups is one of the best ways for us to keep in, to have a dialogue with our customers and understand how we can do better, and not just our customers, but our potential customers. So thinking of ways you can create the community around your app, around your product, will keep the dialogue going and will keep your customers engaged. And then lastly, offering suggestion is something that's really important. So figuring out what your customers are doing and thinking of ways you can teach them how they can do things better. So for example, if you see that this is an example of an email that we're sending to our customers saying, hey, a lot of people are clicking your links, but not that many, like there's not as many app sessions, or your conversion from click to install has gone down. So these are like 5 things you can do to improve your conversion. Maybe branding your link, maybe adding OG images to your link so people know what they're going to get, maybe implementing deep views and things like that. So basically showing them things that they can do better, and offering them suggestions. A great example of that is Amazon, right? I'm buying something and then they show me suggestions of 3 things they think I'll like, and most likely I'm going to buy one of those. I actually buy most of the things from suggestions from Facebook of like dresses I would like and I'm a sucker for that, but obviously it works. So doing that to your users, I think makes a lot of sense. If you haven't tried that, please do. So that's pretty much it. I think we have some questions. I'll let Aaron kind of talk a little bit about how you can stay in touch.
Yeah. I mean, Mata, I don't want to speak for you, but obviously anybody that's here, feel free to reach out to both either of us,
Yeah.
branch.io or moengage.com. I'd be more than happy to, to chat with you about engagement and retention and all topics in between, I'm sure. So.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, Mata, thank you so much. I want to have a chance here to open it up to questions. We had a couple trickle through during the presentation, so I'll start getting to those now. If you have any more questions, feel free to add them because we'll be online for the next couple of minutes, and then we can follow up via email afterwards if you need. So the first question is, what are 3 virality books that you would recommend? And I'll kind of expand on this question by opening up to not just books, but blogs or podcasts, videos, anything that you, any resources that you've seen about virality that you would recommend to a user.
Yeah, so I'll start since I talked about my passion for virality. So I have one book I recently read is Contagion by Jonah Berger, and I think it's really awesome. It kind of goes through like he did a lot of research on what makes things viral, and I think it's an awesome book. I actually read it, took some of the insights, and wrote a blog post about how you can take those things and make your app viral and what are the different steps of virality that we can share after. And then 2 others that are not directly on virality, but I think have a lot, like they're very close to that. So one is The Psychology of Persuasion, Influence the Culture of Persuasion by Cialdini, which basically is like the 6 things you need to do to convince people. It's more about like things that you can do in sales, but convincing someone to share your app, those things are all like go very well with that. And then The Paradox of Choice, which basically says that people need to feel that they have choice, but but you need to actually kind of pre-make the choice for them. They don't like to feel overwhelmed by the choice that they have. So when you think about showing them sharing and things like that, don't show them 100 different places they can share. Pick the ones you think are going to convert the best and so forth.
Awesome. Aaron, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I don't have anything on virality. I mean, Mata's the expert, so I'll leave those all to her.
Cool. Well, I'll have the next question go to you then. But I do want to second Mata's sentiment on Cialdini. I think he's a great author and researcher, and that book has definitely been pretty influential on stuff we do here. So, Aaron, talking about user onboarding, someone mentioned that what if you're only asking them to connect with Facebook? That seems to be a pretty low barrier to entry in terms of the onboarding process. What have you seen there?
We actually don't have it. I don't have any stats for that because most of the time, and Monty, you made, so after this, you can certainly speak to that. But I think for us, we're looking for more, just activation of users, trying to get them to, open it the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. Most of our customers handle a lot of that registration stuff on their own and kind of find their best method for that. But kind of after the after the install and after they're logged in, that's where we really try to get them to that point where they're an engaged user, they've reached a certain engagement milestone, and they're going to be a regular user of the app. So I couldn't speak to that.
So I can speak to an experiment that we did at Kindred again. So we're more about attribution and the best way to get to the app, but we actually tested this in Kindred. And initially we had 2 big buttons, one that said sign up and one that said connect with Facebook. When we moved to just Facebook, we definitely saw an increase, but we also saw some drop off. So there was an increase in signups, but a decrease in clicks. So what we did was actually we had a ginormous connect with Facebook button, but also a very small link on the button that says no Facebook, sign up here, for like those people who are just really uncomfortable with Facebook. And I think that's pretty much a standard that most apps use now. So really take them to Facebook, but have a very small like option for the 20% of people who really hate connecting with Facebook. So I think that's pretty much best practice now. And if you go to most of the largest apps, it's kind of how they do it.
Sounds good. Another question here, Mata, this might be towards you. Is there a way to measure which channel, for instance, Twitter, Facebook, etc., that drive actual downloads and not just clicks on a download link?
Yeah, so that's awesome. That's what Branch does. So if you use our links, we actually show you where they're being clicked, and we show you the actual downloads by channel. I actually wrote an article. I looked at all the different clicks around. I think at the time we had 5,000 apps using us, and I actually look at um, click to download conversion for each different channel. And Facebook actually did really well. Twitter did really badly. SMS was the best one. So it's somewhere in medium. We can send it after. But that's across like many apps. And for your specific app, it might be different. So just using trackable links. If you use a branch link, we automatically show you all of that in our dashboard.
Awesome. And now, Aaron, this one's for you. What's the best way to attribute performance from a push campaign? It says at the end of the day, we all want to drive push and transactions through push. So what do you measure there, and how do you attribute it?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that we do is we measure very carefully, right? That's the one thing to keep in mind. When our customers are really looking to measure push performance, the first thing that they do is they tread very lightly, right? Push is extremely powerful. I always think of it, it's the hammer, right? It's extremely powerful, but it can also break a dish if you hit it, right? So it can be used too much. So what our customers will always do is when they sit down, they'll plan out like, okay, what segment of our audience do we want to test this with? This may be cliche, but it really comes down to just testing, picking a segment, picking a control group, basically taking that segment, splitting it up into two halves, and testing, the messaging, which obviously our tool does automatically, but it's also making sure that you're not overwhelming the quantity of push notifications. So one of the things that we actually have people do, or some of our customers do, is after push notifications, they will monitor certain types of behavior, including uninstalls, right? Because they obviously want to know, like, okay, if I send a push notification within 24 hours, did this individual uninstall my app, or what percentage did, right? So that we're just looking for behavioral hints that say, okay, based on this push notification, what negative repercussions came from it, and obviously what positive repercussions came from it. So I think that's just some of the advice that I can share, but I think again, to boil it down to the simple, it's make sure you properly segment, make sure you've got a control group so you can compare, and then just be very careful with your testing. Test it on a small group first before you roll it out to everybody.
Awesome, that sounds great. So I think that's all we have time for today. Aaron, Mata, thank you so much. I hope everyone found this pretty insightful. And then, as we said, if you want to get in touch, you can visit our websites at branch.io or moengage.com. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.